I'm Nicole Donaldson. I'm Vice President of Philanthropic Strategies and Partnerships at the Central Florida Foundation. And today we're going to be discussing the topic of environment and sustainability. We're joined by some amazing panelists and are looking forward to the conversation. I just wanted to share that this call is being recorded. And so just please be aware and feel free, if at any point in time you have questions throughout, you can put those in the Q&A, or you can also put them in the chat box. At this time, I'd like to hand it over to Mark Brewer, President and CEO of the Central Florida Foundation.
Thanks, Nicole, and good afternoon, everyone. The discussions that happen in the community around environment and sustainability are always interesting to me. The very terms, environment and sustainability, have become almost generic terms at this point, where people talk about it, but they're not always talking about the same thing or talking about it in the same way. And so we find it interesting that as philanthropy turns its eye toward environment and sustainability, that people have questions, lots of questions. So we've assembled some people today to share their thoughts and give you a better understanding about what environment and sustainability actually mean and how they fit together. And so I'm really honored that we have three great panel members. We have two with us now and one that'll be joining us shortly. So let me kick off by introducing you to the two who are here now. And I want to start with Christianah Oyenuga, who is the Sustainable Cities Manager for Nature Conservancy in Florida. Now, that's an organization who everybody knows its name, but you may not know that in this role, Christianah is responsible for developing urban conservation strategies, and she leads the collaborative planning and implementation of green infrastructure projects in the Orlando metropolitan area. Many people know the Conservancy as being a place that acquires real estate and protects it, but her role is really a more urban area role. So I'm anxious for you to get to know her. Christianah, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Mark. And start by saying good afternoon. It is a pleasure to be here today. And thank you, Mark. Thank you to the Central Florida Foundation for the invitation to share some of the Nature Conservancy's work in Central Florida. So I guess I would just begin with just briefly talking about that and what we do. As you mentioned, Mark, the Nature Conservancy, it has been dedicated to conserving the lands and waters on which all life depends. TNC relies on scientific evidence and analysis to create innovative and collaborative on-the-ground solutions to our region's challenges. So nature and people can thrive together. So I'll just stop there and hand it back over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Christianah. I appreciate it. Also, we have with us today Traci Deen, who's the president and CEO of Conservation Florida. And Traci has something in common with my wife. They are both sixth-generation Floridians. She was born in Homestead, and Traci is passionate about protecting Florida's wild and working lands and the generations of Floridians to come. She actually leads a team at her organization that deals with statewide conservation efforts. And her work in the state of Florida is particularly important because she's also an environmental lawyer and an active member of the legal community. Traci, I think you can turn your camera on now, and we will be glad to welcome you.
Thank you, Mark. I'm really excited to be with all of you today. Christianah, it's nice to be with you again. So yeah, thank you, Mark. My name is Traci again. I'm the president and CEO of Conservation Florida. We are a statewide land conservancy, and we work from Pensacola to the Florida Keys. And what we really do is we're working to protect Florida's water, Florida's wildlife, our wild spaces, and we're protecting and connecting the Florida Wildlife Corridor, which is a geography that spans our state. The Nature Conservancy is a partner that we adore working with and have for a long time. So it's nice to be with colleagues as we really link arms and protect our wild and wonderful places.
I appreciate that, and thank you for being here. And we also, a third partner here, we're having a little bit of trouble getting Ray on the line. So I want to let you know that the third member of our panel is the president and CEO of an organization that we love. He is the co-founder and president of Infinite Zion Farms. And in place of Ray, I think for the moment, we're going to have Maven Rogers from the city of Orlando. And so I want to introduce her. I just want to tell you that the Infinite Zion Farms is a great organization that is really trying to bring a new way of thinking about urban farming to Paramore and give that community access to produce and grocery stores. So I'm sorry, Maven. I think I said you were from the city. You're actually from the county, and I apologize for that.
No, it's okay. I actually previously worked with the city, so I'm from both. So
you're ubiquitous. Yeah. You belong everywhere. It's good to have you here.
Yes, thank you. Good to be here and nice to see our lovely panelists today. Ray should be jumping on. We're having some Wi-Fi issues, so I'll be taking his spot until then. I have been working along Infinite Zion Farms for roughly 5 years now. We started our work at the city of Orlando, actually because the city of Orlando decided to work on some urban agriculture initiatives. And what they wanted to do is conserve land in these highly urbanized environments. So what we did is we basically took some land that we were working alongside real estate and development, and we conserved this for urban agriculture initiatives. So that's when Infinite Zion came in and really took off and has really bolstered our food security initiatives, especially in that neighborhood of Pine Hills and Paramore, and they are in the process of expanding. So we're really excited for today's conversation.
Perfect. So I want to kick us off with a general question. I mentioned in the beginning that environment and sustainability are terms tossed around by a lot of people in very generic ways. So I'd like to start by having all of you weigh in a little bit on what your thought process is about the most pressing issues that face the community now as it pertains to environment and sustainability, and perhaps give us your definition of environment and sustainability. Let's start with you, Traci.
I'd be happy to jump in. So from Conservation Florida's perspective, we're looking at, and we're headquartered in downtown Orlando, and I join you all from Winter Park today, but we're looking at the state of Florida as a whole. And to us, our ultimate goal is to have a state of Florida where protected lands support clean and healthy freshwater, where our lands are connected and support a statewide wildlife corridor, where protected lands support healthy populations of our native plants and wildlife, where protected lands support our economy, right? We want Florida to be what it is, but we want to continue to protect what makes Florida special and ensure that our state's future is one that we can all be really proud of, and that supports thriving, healthy communities of both people and wildlife alike. From where we're sitting, we see that our state is, it's the best place to live. As you mentioned, I'm a sixth generation Floridian. I want to live here, but we have people moving here every day, about 1,000 people moving to our state every single year. That's a city the size of Orlando joining the state of Florida every single year. But we're still relying on the same natural resources that our population was just one lifetime ago. When my grandfather was growing up here, we had about 2 million Floridians, and we're pushing 23 million now. So with that comes a greater demand on our natural resources. And what we're seeing a lot, and I'm sure Christianah will touch on this, is really the transition of our rural lands to more urban uses. And so how we balance that and how we grow in a healthy way and how we protect our special places while also fostering thriving communities is, I think, what we're all here to talk about.
My wife always reminds me that no matter how long I'm here, and I've been here for 40 years, I'll never be a resident. I'm always an outsider who moved here, and
Nah.
her 6 generations of family have been. When her family moved here, you had to be productive, which means you either had to grow citrus or raise cattle. That was about your only choices in the 1860s, and they were very successful at that. Christianah, tell us about your vision of sustainability and environment and what's most pressing in your eyes.
Sure thing, Mark. Thanks, Traci, for that really great, intro into what your organization is doing here. And similarly, the Nature Conservancy has been, focused on land protection and conservation historically. But several years ago, TNC realized that to truly protect the wild places that we all love, we must also work within that human and nature interface to address conservation issues, to creatively transform mindsets, to inspire others to also protect and respect the environment that we all love. So with that, the Conservancy started reimagining and is now moving forward with this expanded approach to our conservation work, where we recognize that it is now critical more than ever to address the dual threats of global climate change and biodiversity loss. And how do we do that? Here in Florida, TNC is embarking on a number of core strategies, one of which is aimed at creating a systemic shift in Florida's development patterns and practices. We do that through equitable, multi-benefit, integrated solutions, solutions that promote vibrant, healthy, and sustainable communities and natural ecosystems. You might be wondering why the need for this expanded approach to our conservation work. Traci mentioned it earlier, we're rapidly urbanizing. And a result of this unprecedented urban growth is the loss of lands, loss of wetlands, wildlife habitats, and loss of biodiversity. Similarly, the demand for basic services, such as clean air and clean water, it's increasing. And the pressures in our vital natural ecosystems, those pressures are intensifying. Recent data show, like as Traci mentioned, we know that 1,000 people are moving here to Florida daily. So when we think about it as the Nature Conservancy, there is an urgency for cities to transform this development trajectory and start thinking about how do we utilize nature-based solutions, because we know nature is the best defense to addressing the threats of climate change, the threats of biodiversity loss. How do we utilize nature-based solutions with equity and sustainability at the forefront to address these pressing issues? So our approach, TNC's approach in this space, is really focused on advancing nature-based solutions. And you might be, what are nature-based solutions, and how are we thinking about advancing nature-based solutions? So nature-based solutions are solutions that are not only motivated by nature, but they're also supported by nature. And the solutions may also offer social, environmental, economic benefits while increasing community resilience. These solutions could be solutions to social and equity challenges, could be solutions to stormwater control, could be solutions to that promote disaster preparedness. These solutions could include green infrastructure or blue infrastructure, such as wetlands, forest, urban forest, tree canopy, nature parks. So when we think about advancing the solutions, it would be, how do we do that? We do that through collaboration. We have a long-held culture of collaboration at the Nature Conservancy through the co-development of tools to fill gaps and address those barriers to implementing those solutions. We are collaborating with stakeholders to increase resilience by relying on nature services. We are thinking about how do we lighten the footprint of urban development on our natural resources. And so for us, the focus within that human nature interface, as we address our loss of habitat, loss of land, loss of wetlands, we really have to be rethinking, reimagining how we rewild our cities, how we ensure that development works hand in hand with conservation. And so when I say we're lightening our footprint within urban development, we really have to start thinking about communities in Florida, master plan communities in Florida. How do we work with master plan communities in Florida in order to ensure that we are reducing that footprint on nature, on lanes, and on wetlands? And so that's one way we are doing that within the environment as we think about environment and sustainability working hand in hand.
So geographically, Maven, you're the home girl at the county here, and Christianah and Traci both talked about the 1,000 people a day who move to Florida. We have 1,500 people a month who move into Central Florida. And this is a continuing issue that we have to deal with here. What's your perspective on environment and sustainability, and what's most pressing in your mind?
Absolutely. And I'll speak on Infinite Zion first, and then I'll go to the county because we definitely have some goals there. So Infinite Zion Farms, what we do there is we kind of take a multifaceted approach. A lot of individuals don't understand actually the environmental impact of a food system. So when we talk about food systems and growing food, it's the amount of acreage per land. It's the amount of water that goes into that food. It's also the insecticides, the fungicides, and the fertilizers that are predominantly chemicals that are in our food. And then after the food leaves the farm, it also has an additional environmental impact by the traveling time. So depending on where we get our food, it has to get to us some way. And refrigeration is actually a huge greenhouse gas emitter. And so really, when you look at the whole food system and how it elopes, it's much better to get your food from the community that you live in. It'll be more nutritious and better for the environment. So our focus on sustainability is really trying to eliminate chemicals out of the food system. So we use all organic amendments and compost to grow our food. It's also about the education and getting people out and the experiences. So especially when you look into low-income communities and you look into the development and the parks, we know that our neighborhoods that are typically low income do not have the parks that are available in middle to higher income neighborhoods. So if we're able to beautify spaces and urban development through agriculture, we can solve multiple issues. We can provide safe places for people to come and experience. We can provide education, and we can provide healthy, nutritious foods. Because one thing that we know is that when we look at food insecurities and we're looking at food banks as a whole, that is one piece of the puzzle, but it's going to require many, many, many pieces to really develop multifaceted solutions to address food insecurities. And so Infinite Zion works on multiple avenues of sustainability. We do have solar panels that are about to be installed. So all our electricity will run off 100% renewable energy, which we're very excited for. We're also installing an aeroponic system that will run off that solar to provide more dense produce to the community based on the need of the community. Because what I will say now is in Pine Hills and Paramore, there are people that are still hungry. And we definitely need to increase our production and increase our efforts to help solve this issue. Now taking off my Infinite hat and putting on my Orange County, when it comes to development, we are working on our Vision 2050 plan. You know, as we can see, land use is a huge, huge issue. We can see that Orlo Vista with Hurricane Ian, you know, where we're putting our developments, if we're putting them on top of wetlands, you know, and they're continuously flooding, we need to reevaluate that, right? So we are looking into that at the county and looking into incorporating some of the sustainability language and really smart planning to densify our growth in the urban corridor is the first step at really making all this work.
Thanks, Maven. That's good. So, Christianah, let me ask you for a minute about what are the most innovative things your organization are doing in the space that you described earlier? I think everyone right now is really focused on, we've got a set of problems, issues that have gone on for a long time. So what's the most innovative thing you're working on right now?
Thanks, Mark. There are a couple of things we're working on to start with what the tools we're developing. As I mentioned earlier, we are developing tools that can help fill some gaps in implementation, remove barriers to implementation of nature-based solutions. And so one of the tools we're working on right now is more like a, well, let me start with the resource. We have been working with our collaborators to figure out how do we work within the urban development space to lighten the footprint, as I mentioned earlier. And our focus, right, is on master plan communities across Florida that require mass clearing and grading of lanes, of wetlands for the purpose of stormwater control. And in doing that, we know that in order to partially compensate for, disrupted soils and degraded ecosystems that occur as a result of development, a lot of turf grass is installed. And the turf grass depends on in-ground irrigation systems, on regular fertilization, on frequent mowing, and into those cookie cutter communities. And so using conventional land use and landscape practices in residential areas tends to we're consuming a lot of water. And so we're thinking about how do we address this conventional land use and landscape practices in residential areas? These practices that neither help to mitigate nor compensate for the larger problem of habitat loss, of water demand, of Florida's natural ecosystems. How do we address these practices that contribute to nutrient pollution that negatively affects our watersheds, our wetlands, and our surface waters? Believe it or not, landscape irrigation here in Florida with new Florida homes account for as much as 2/3 of total water use per household. And so the installation of automatic sprinkler systems in residential yards, it really has become standard practice within the built environment. So the Nature Conservancy is we're working with our collaborators. We're starting to reimagine, what if we could preserve lands, save water in a way that benefited everyone, that kept water in the aquifer for natural systems that depend on it? Could sprinkler-free Florida-friendly landscapes be even more successful than the conventional Florida landscape, the traditional the conventional landscape practices for the environment, for homeowners, thereby everyone's saving money. And while saving money, we're protecting our water resources. When we think about the fact that sprinkler-free homes within Florida-friendly landscapes use 49 to 61% less water than homes that have sprinkler systems. And so just thinking about how do we address this? We have been working with our collaborators to engage and shift the mindset across doing that. The perceptions, shifting mindsets and perceptions and changing behavior, that for one is something that's very, very difficult because oftentimes perception is reality. And so how do we provide those tools, the data that's necessary for folks to know this is not only great for the environment, but it's great for your bottom line. It's great for your finances. And so we're trying to drive that message home in that sense. So that's one of the things we're working on. Another plan that we're working on is we're working with collaborators to develop an interactive tool, a tool to visualize the environmental, economic, health, and social challenges and opportunities in Central Florida in order to develop priorities for where a community can grow and how a community can grow in a way that balances conservation planning, that balances economic development, that addresses climate change, but also and promotes biodiversity. This tool that we're working on will be easy to use. It will be publicly accessible. It would reveal where environmental inequities exist by evaluating a wide array of vulnerability indicators as well as resilience indicators. We're hoping that this tool will not only identify opportunities for investments in nature-based solutions and green infrastructure in order to show, where we can provide health, climate, and socioeconomic benefits, but that this tool, which will be designed as a one-stop shop, could help point us to where organizations and initiatives are working in these areas and where collaborations can be strengthened and can be built in order to co-create solutions for our community. So this tool that we're developing, or should I say co-developing as a matter of fact, can also increase awareness and visibility of these local challenges that we're facing in Central Florida. And not only the challenges, we're also really concerned about where the opportunities are, identifying the opportunities to help all of us better understand that where the unique challenges are in each neighborhood, what each neighborhood is facing in our region, and also could serve as a sobering reminder that communities of color, low wealth communities remain on the front lines of climate crisis, as Maven mentioned, Arlo Vista and communities in Sanford and in Seminole County. And so it is important that as within our capacity or expertise as a science-based organization, that we are creating those tools to help support the work that advocates are doing, that decision makers need, that planners need, that environmentalists need, to have this quick go-to data and information and resource to help catalyze change and possibly, potentially influence policies and practices.
That's good. Traci, I'm interested in Conservation Florida's innovation, but I also want to talk to all of you a little bit about how equity plays into the work that you do. Christianah just mentioned it, and I want to make sure that we get all of you a chance to really talk about that for a minute. But Traci, first, what's innovation look like to you, and what's the most important thing Conservation Florida is working on?
Thank you for the question, Mark. So the number one way that Conservation Florida is really aiming to achieve our larger mission is by saving land, right? And how we do that can take many different shapes and forms. Primarily, we work with landowners across the state that are interested in conserving their land, and it's typically for a variety of really great reasons. That may mean accepting or acquiring conservation easements or agreements with the landowner to permanently conserve their property. That may mean holding lands in fee, meaning we own the properties outright and then steward and manage those properties forever. That may also mean, like Christianah mentioned, working with our partners, and we see that there is a ton of power in partnership in our state, and linking arms has been just a critical component to achieving landscape scale conservation in Florida. And then finally, we make sure that we are, in addition to working with our landowners and our collaborators, our partners across the state, that we are also promoting effective programming, nature-based programming, to introduce people to nature. Like Christianah alluded to, we want to make sure that people in our more urban communities have access to nature, are exploring nature. And I think that it's almost inevitable when you get outside in wild Florida, it's inevitable that you'll fall in love with it. And then we form additional advocates. Now, Christianah mentioned earlier that nature is the best defense, and I couldn't agree more. And then Maven mentioned that agriculture can really beautify a space. And on both of those points, one of the innovative approaches that Conservation Florida takes is by working not only on wild lands in our state, but also on our working lands, on our agricultural lands. Some of the last vast landscapes in our state, some of the last landscapes that are holding and storing water, that are recharging water, that are home to our endangered species, those lands are working productive agricultural spaces. And so our organization focuses on both the conservation of our wild, wonderful spaces, but also on our working lands and making sure that those properties are also prioritized for conservation. And so, yes, nature is going to be a solution. If not, you won't have to convince me. I will be standing right there. I'm yelling that from the rooftops, but agriculture is going to be an absolute priority for us. Beyond that, we're also interested in what we're calling connectivity or conservation compatible communities. And so we've also touched on that a little bit, But that means, and it gives a little bit of a stomach ache to a lot of traditional conservationists, but it means working with our developers and saying, listen, you've purchased this 2,000-acre property. It's in a critical part of Central Florida, and there's a wildlife corridor. There's a stream, there's a river that it's adjacent to. Build here and conserve this portion, and we'll work with you in planning for that. And we'll hold that easement and pledge to conserve that portion of the property forever. So we're looking at conservation through a really big lens, and we're hoping to build a massive table where every single Floridian feels comfortable and excited to sit there and talk about the future of Florida and how it looks. And that will include our agriculture community, and that will include our development community. And I think together, through innovative approaches, we can have the future of Florida, a future for Florida that's very, very bright, very green.
So Maven, I want you to address the equity question, but I also want you to talk about how Ray has done some really creative things to create community around the farm. It's not like the farm clearly is dropped in the middle of a community, but now you have to create community around the farm. Tell us a little bit about how that works.
Yes, absolutely. So actually, Infinite Zion was not the first farmers on this plot of land. So previously, in the past years before they had got there, we had two different farming organizations there. And one of the reasons that those organizations were unable to really keep the land producing is actually the lack of community involvement. And for those of you that do not know Ray is a Black farmer, and Paramore is a Black community. And so one of the things that I believe Ray and his team were able to bring in is experience and relatability. And so they were able to connect with the community in different ways than the other farming organizations really were. They were also one thing that's really important, especially when it comes to food, is culture. So growing food that people want to eat, that's part of their culture and their everyday lifestyle. We found an increase almost immediately. We were actually, the city of Orlando was in Paramore, and I'll never forget this moment where they were trying to give away food and they just couldn't, because they were giving away food that people just didn't really typically eat. And everyone was like, we don't know what to do with this. We don't want it. And, really Ray and his team came in, saw the want, saw the need, talked to the community. Every Tuesday, we have Taco Tuesday, where we cook hot meals for families and anyone that really wants to come in and enjoy those meals, and really find a sense of community. It takes a long time to develop that. It's not overnight by any means. And Ray and his team still had to work very, very hard to make that happen. But once the community feels that they can be there in that space and that they're listening, it really becomes such a beautiful space. And again, a learning space, a space for people to come relax when they've had a hard day at work. There's many of times where they're at the farm at 7 to 8 p.m. and people are coming by and saying, hey, can we just grab some food for tomorrow? And again, these are nutrient dense foods. So it gives the people the availability to create a healthy meal and actually stay full. Because what we see oftentimes at these gas stations, these little bodegas that are in Paramore, Pine Hills, it's Doritos, it's hot dogs, it's food that isn't really going to supplement you for a long time. So you're going to have to go back and buy more food. So we really address equity in a multifaceted approach. And just to kind of touch on your innovation, because it kind of goes into our equity piece. I've worked in sustainability for 6 years now. And when we talk about innovation, sustainability is really funny to me, because we either have these wonderful new innovative technologies to address sustainability, or we actually really need to go back in time and do it like we used to do it. And so farming is a great example of that. And really our old practices, our old farming practices are actually some of the most sustainable practices. It wasn't until the 1940s, 1950s till we really started to ramp up our production of food, which did help feed people. But then again, compromise the integrity and nutrition of food. So at Infinite Zion Farms, we actually use historical Black farming practices to farm the food. And so we really work on empowering the youth and the community through their ancestral knowledge, because we often know that slavery is looked at as traumatic for so many different individuals. And when we really look at the practices that they brought to our region, they fed America and they helped build America to what it is today. And Ray and his team want to empower the Black community of their narrative. Instead of looking at it and saying that's traumatic, we really want to build foundational knowledge and understanding that these people were the innovators and they were the individuals that made America what they are today. So that's how we kind of address some equity innovation. We really want to create some historical centers that'll be on site. And we're very excited for that. We want to have a women in agriculture site, and then farming, the slavery and farming practices, education around that, and different individuals that really led the way that do not get highlighted in our history books.
Yeah, that's Infinite Zion Farms is incredibly innovative. It's a long way from a stalk of cauliflower and a recipe card to get to where Infinite Zion Farms has gotten today in an urban neighborhood. I want to talk a little bit, Traci, to you about how people can get involved and help Conservation Florida. What do you need? What are you looking for?
Thank you for asking. So the very honest truth is support. Every drop of water that we safeguard, every acre that we save, every home of every endangered species that we're focusing on, we are completely grateful to the people that support our organization. There's no way that we could do this work without them. So we are always looking for partners to support our mission. We are completely rooted in a great love for this state and are a hopeful organization. We're looking to protect a future of Florida that's bright. And so if you love Florida the way that we do, and if you love our water and our wildlife and our wild places, then we would love to talk to you about how to get more involved. We're also always looking for volunteers. We're looking for people who are interested in logging biodiversity and helping with our preserves. We have a brand new preserve within the city limits of Orlando, about 40 acres, and that we are going to need so much help with. It will take so many of us rolling up our sleeves and getting very dirty in the wetlands, cleaning up trash and planting natives and removing invasives. And it's going to take a lot of love and a lot of community support, but it is considered the last remaining old growth forest in the city of Orlando. And so it's important and it's special, and we're going to need everybody to get involved. And finally, be an ambassador. If you care about this issue, and I think if you're joining us today, there's a very good chance that you do, share your care for wild Florida to your friends and your family, and let them know about the work that Conservation Florida is doing, and join us in our fight to save our wild places.
So Christianah, you're kind of the gold standard environmental organization, right? Everyone knows who you are, but not everyone knows all the things you do. How do you engage people? What do you need? Clearly you need dollars, and that's a given, but what else do you need in terms of getting people engaged to fight with you for the work that you're doing for the environment?
Absolutely. Thanks, Mark. And of course, we cannot underscore the fact that, yes, we do need dollars to do this work. Absolutely. But more importantly, we know that a lot of this work cannot be done. There are unique environmental challenges within urban areas at the interface of, the urban and rural areas. And in order to solve these problems, it would require unique environmental solutions. So as organizations, we are always open to and looking forward to collaboration. We would love to collaborate with organizations to address these mounting threats of climate change and biodiversity, to protect and restore our ecosystems, to really start thinking about how do we come together and generate coordinated, concerted efforts within Central Florida to solve these issues. So collaboration, trying to reach out to organizations that we typically work with, like Conservation Florida, but also community organizations here in Central Florida, like Infinite Zion Farms, with small community-based organizations that are emerging, that have been working as well for decades, but we have not typically interfaced with each other. So we have been building these relationships. We are still looking to reach out to others and have other organizations, if you're on this call, join us in this effort to collaboratively develop solutions. Let's plan and implement projects that will not only protect our ecosystems, but would also help to restore our ecosystems. I think that, for one, that collaborative approach is something that we hold dear. And we know that if we don't collaborate, it will also be harder for us to address any inequities that arise as a result of climate change, but have always been existing long before we even started working in this space here in Central Florida. And that's one. Secondly, I think there are ways that we can, as individuals, as Floridians, find solutions to these issues. And that would be, especially when we think about protecting water and reducing our water demand, would be tapping into Florida-friendly landscapes. How do we start thinking about, as people, as homeowners, in promoting sprinkler-free, Florida-friendly landscapes? That's a mouthful, but how do we do that? And so we are working with our collaborators and asking, and hoping residents will start thinking about plants, native plants that use less water, preserving mature trees versus planting a new tree. Of course, planting a new tree will in the future grow and provide shade and habitat, but let's start maintaining and preserving the existing mature trees that we have, because they do provide more ecosystem benefits. How do we incorporate a diversity of plant species that attract and provide habitat for pollinators, that attract and create connectivity for wildlife? How can we ensure that we're minimizing turf grass and using alternative grasses and ground covers that do not require constant watering, and we're tapping into our water supply? And so there are ways we can do this. The counties, everyone can as well visit their county's extension office to find what are those native plants, what are those Florida-friendly plants that can help to reduce your water use and ultimately help to save you dollars. And so in that vein, we're thinking about working together collaboratively with organizations, but then there are things we can do as individuals, as Floridians, to help to protect and restore our natural ecosystems.
It always has been a mystery to me how a state that gets so much rain has to have sprinklers at all. I'm trying to figure out why that's the case. Seems like if it rains every day, which it does almost every day, that we could find something to plant that doesn't need to be sprinkled on top of all that rain. Good message. Maven, how about Infinite Zion Farms? How about Infinite Zion Farms? Clearly, money is something you can always use over there, and Ray does a great job of telling the story around the community. But what else could you use?
Yeah, thank you. And just to speak on your water for a second, we're actually, especially when it comes to grass, the county is testing right now, dressing grass with compost and turning the irrigation off.
Yeah.
So we'll see where that goes. But yes, so for Infinite Zion Farms, what we really look for is volunteers. So we have volunteer opportunities every Tuesday and then every other Saturday. That's advertised on our webpage and through our social media. And really what volunteerism does for us, it doesn't just provide hands on the farm, right? We're actually providing a space of connectivity to bridge the gap between individuals that may have previously not came to Paramore because of one reason or another. And now they feel like they can. And how can we bridge that gap into really making communities more, not segregated from different socioeconomic statuses, but really just a mixed mode of a community that can come together, different backgrounds, different lifestyles, and really get to learn from each other. So that's one of our goals for our volunteerism program. And another one is, of course, connecting people to their environment, especially when you look into, there's multiple studies, when you look into high urban environments, a lot of times individuals are losing the connections to the natural environment because their natural environment becomes a built environment, which can go hand in hand, but we lose that connection. There's oftentimes that kids that come to the farm, it's their first time seeing a butterfly or a beehive or any of those things. And those moments, those core memories really make a difference, especially in sustainability and environmentalism, because if we as individuals become so disconnected from our natural environment, we're going to lose people that actually care about these initiatives. So that is our number one need, is really just getting people to come out, come volunteer. Of course, besides the funding, number one is funding. We're really trying to get an education center built at our farm so we can really work with OCPS and get students to come out and teach them about these farming practices. But other than that, yes, volunteers, and we welcome everyone to come out and see the farm.
Perfect. So Nicole is joining us again because she has some questions that have been sent to her from folks, and I want to give her an opportunity to give you the questions so we can get the answers.
We've had a lot of activity on the Q&A, and thank you to the panelists who've been responding. I know not everybody has access to see some of those questions, so wanted to bring up a few in the last 10 minutes that we have. One that I think is top of mind that was a more recent question asked is regarding the hurricane, where obviously we saw a tremendous amount of flooding, a lot of tree loss. I know in our neighborhood, we've seen a lot of trees that came down, or as a result, people have decided to remove a lot of trees with fear of future hurricanes bringing them down. One of the questions that is asked is in relation to that, of how we can kind of take into account this sort of master planning. I did receive a second question that kind of aligns with that, of what some of those best strategies are for integrating sustainable practices into master plan communities. So if just handing that out to the panel, if any of you can help respond to that.
Yeah, I can take that question. So yes, that is a big concern. The conservation of our natural green spaces and predominantly urbanized environments needs to be considered in Vision 2050. And we are looking into that, because what's happening is when you talk about development, and if you overdevelop an area, where is the water going to go? Especially if we don't have adequate storm drainage and things of that nature. So we're definitely looking into that. I did see something about wetland mitigation funds as a question, and we do as a county have permits. They might not always be perfect. And what I would advise everyone on this call is to if they're not perfect, or if you see fault, please email your county commissioner, or you can email the sustainability office, and we can start looking into those things and really trying to adapt and change. We're very open to suggestions. Sustainability as we know it is really new, and sometimes we're not always going to get it right. And so we want to make sure that we're able to. So please, if anyone sees any kind of, things that they would like to address, please email us. Another thing I want to quickly add is, Commissioner Wilson led an initiative to save Reedy Creek from development. And that is a high valued wetland area that flows into our Everglades. So, like Christianah was saying previously, these toolkits to our politicians are absolutely invaluable, because there's so much going on all the time, and not everyone can know everything. So if you see something, please email your county commissioner or email the Office of Sustainability and we can try to get down to it. But absolutely, the flooding in communities is something that will be addressed in 2050, and we're looking towards solutions.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that.
I want to add quickly.
Oh, yes. Please do.
Go ahead, Traci.
Oh, I want to echo Maven's first point that making sure that we can.
So I definitely want to echo that as well. And
Christianah, I think we're having some connection issues. We're going to go ahead and let Traci respond real quick.
I think we're very likely to be in agreement and probably making the same point because yes, absolutely. Making sure that we are conserving our wetlands, conserving our floodplains, and letting nature do what it does best is going to be important as we look forward, particularly as we address climate resiliency and future planning for our communities, our more urban communities, but also our rural communities as well. We've seen a lot of flooding across our state, both in our cities and in our rural working landscapes as well. And so making sure that we utilize community planning and incorporate our green and blue infrastructure as priorities will be critical. And Conservation Florida is a proud partner to Orange County and TNC. And so we look forward to linking arms and trying to figure this out together.
Great. I think we lost Christianah there, but hopefully she'll join us again here soon. And Traci, I'm not sure if you can answer this question, but I had also received a question on the side, just what is happening with the Florida Wildlife Corridor?
I would be very happy to answer that. So we work on protecting the corridor from Pensacola to the Florida Keys. This is a geography that was established by a legislative act about 2 years ago. Groups across the state are working to conserve connectors, critical linkages. Conservation Florida right now, we're working on over 60,000 acres within the Florida Wildlife Corridor. And that's to permanently protect an existing corridor. We have a green space that spans our state that allows nature, our larger mammals and our smaller, room to roam. And it does so much more than that, though. The corridor also protects our agriculture communities, contributes significantly to our healthy economy, provides places for people to get outside and recreate, and protects our water. And a good significant part of the corridor, we will see, I think we'll look back and see it served an ecosystem service by storing water after our most recent hurricane. So we are working to protect the Florida Wildlife Corridor. It is a key component of what we focus on every single day. And we're not going to stop until we have a permanently protected functional corridor that spans our state.
Great. Christianah, I see that you've joined us again, hopefully.
Yes, absolute technical issues. My apologies. So just to have an opportunity to respond to the question about, I believe that Maven shared about wetland protection as well as water supply. I just want to point that Florida is rated #1 in the nation for master plan communities. Just imagine having that number of master plan communities, residential communities across the state. And having that means that we have to find collaborative and innovative ways to work with those developers. And so our collaborators are reaching out to developers and rethinking, how do we change the mindset and perceptions and provide solutions to saving water, to preserving water, to keeping our landscapes pristine, to ensuring our ecosystems are protected with as minimal impact on the soil, on our lands as possible. And so we have been working in the space, ensuring that how do we mitigate these issues. And so our collaborators at some point, just recently, last week, established a handbook that provides landscape guidelines for sustainable residential development. And these guidelines are based on principles of sustainable design, and those guidelines are intended to maximize residential communities' amenities, maximize the homeowner's experience, while also preserving our ecology and ensuring that our landscapes are more functional and provide multiple benefits. So I just want to touch on that. And the other part of it with the wetlands is that our wetlands, we know, address a number of issues. Wetlands are nature's solution to flood control. Wetlands are nature's solutions to addressing water quality. And so it is important for us to start thinking about how do we preserve the pristine wetlands versus damaging them, degrading them, and recreating new wetlands. And so we are finding and trying to find innovative ways to work with not only developers, with county government, with decision makers on addressing that issue from an urban design standpoint, from the get-go. Before we get to the point of construction, let's start to tackle that and address that from the front end of design. And so we're having those conversations. We're involved in those collaborations, and we're hoping that when we start working with one developer, that would really permeate and be scaled up so that other developers come into the fold and really realize that there is possibility here that can help them save money, but also help them make money.
Hey, Nicole, I know you are ready to close this out, but before you do that, Ray Warthen has joined the call, and Maven Rogers he's done an amazing job of Maven's done an amazing job of representing you here, Ray, but I just want Ray to have a minute to say a few words. His father was raised on a farm, and when he died, Ray recognized that the ability to try to find ways to turn urban land into farm was an important thing. He planted fruits and vegetables in his front and backyard and learned the ropes of it, and now he's created this amazing Infinite Zion Farms in Paramore. So Ray, welcome. I know you guys are off celebrating a birthday in Mexico today, right?
I apologize. I apologize. We got the time wrong. I feel so confident we were on time, not realizing the time here is different. So my apologies to all of you and the staff. I'll make it over the free cooking dinner up on the farm for you all. We literally up for tour, so I apologize.
It's all right. Well, we're happy. We've had a great discussion, and Maven did a great job of representing the work that you do and helping people understand how important it is in the neighborhood.
Yes. No, thank you all so much. I know you all are coming to a close, but just when I'm here, I apologize about that, and definitely wanted to say anything, babe.
No, we're just really happy that we're able to continue to make an impact in the Paramore community and really serve those who are in desperate need, right? Especially in the midst of tragedies like with Hurricane Ivan, so many in the Paramore area, in the Pine Hills area, and other communities that are strapped for resources. The infrastructure within the community isn't there, right? And so we're serving a population that is in that desperate need. So out of our garden, it's small but mighty. It produces more than 6,000 pounds of produce annually, and we're continuing to find ways to increase our yield and get more food to the community and connect with them in a way that Ray has found that he's really been able to bridge that connection through events like Thugged Out Thursdays, right, where we turn up some music and Taco Tuesdays, really feeding the community, reaching out to people, having our CSA program that also contributes food to the community at need. So anything you want?
Yeah, and also since Hurricane Ivan hit, we suffered some damage as well. But what's happened, we've now handing out more food from our pantry produce to the community, because it wasn't only our farm that was hit hard, the community was hit hard as well. So now our produce and the food giveaways have been more frequent because of the hurricane. So we're glad to be in the Paramore community and be that beam of light. We hope to do more in the Paramore community as well. So thank you all.
Well, thank you both for all you do, and I'll turn it back to Nicole so she can close us out.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks to all of our great panelists today for joining us in this conversation. We appreciate everybody being here today to listen and look forward to the future community conversation. Wishing everyone a great day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.